Generating traffic and sales can be a challenge for online merchants. But selling on the Walmart Marketplace puts your products in front of millions of customers who shop on Walmart.com. And right now, sellers who join Walmart Marketplace can save up to 50% on referral and fulfillment fees for the first 90 days. So get started today. Head over to marketplace.walmart.com/savings. That's marketplace.walmart.com/savings.
Welcome to E-Commerce Conversations, a weekly podcast focusing on e-commerce topics featuring interviews with prominent people in the e-commerce space.
Welcome to E-Commerce Conversations by Practical E-Commerce. My name is Kerry Murdoch. For many e-commerce merchants, email marketing is a principal source of revenue, and a merchant's email list is critically important to the company's success. But what happens when a list becomes dormant and subscribers stop opening or clicking on the emails? Dormant email list is our topic today. To explain strategies for managing dormant lists, we are joined by Ross Kramer. He's co-founder and CEO of Listrak, the pioneering email service provider. Well, Ross, thank you for your time today.
Hey, thanks for having me on again, Kerry. Great to be here.
Ross, we're looking forward to talking to you today about a dormant email list. You're, of course, an expert in email marketing. Many of our listeners, smaller e-commerce merchants, rely on email marketing as a principal source of bringing in sales. And our topic today, of course, is email lists that become dormant, that have recipients or subscribers that don't open or click through emails anymore. And that's our topic today. And my first question for you is, I'm going to pose a hypothetical question for you. And that is, let's assume a retailer has a list of, say, 20,000 past customers that's opted into his email list. Let's assume 15,000 of those are over 5 years old and they hardly ever open an email anymore. In that scenario, what should a retailer do?
Well, I think the first thing that the retailer should do is do a Google search on email acquisition strategies.
Okay.
Because if they've got if their list is 20,000 strong and 15,000 of those are over 5 years old, then the retailer really needs paddling because they have not focused on acquisition strategies. However, if they find themselves in this case where they've got a lot of old addresses, then they really need to really understand a couple of things. One is, are these addresses causing me deliverability problems? That's really the first thing to understand. Once you take a closer look at that, it's important to look at by ISP and really look at, okay, of these 15,000 dormant addresses, where do these guys live? Is it Yahoo, Gmail, Hotmail, Live, Comcast, et cetera, et cetera? Because each ISP is going to treat your dormant addresses a little bit differently. We're going to assume that all of these 15,000 addresses are deliverable and that they're not bouncing. Obviously, if any of these are bouncing back, you want to remove them right away. I've got a case study, a very similar case study that we presented at eTail this year. One of our clients, Birkenstock Central, had a very, very similar. Actually, it was 16,000 inactive subscribers where we had seen no orders and no opens for six months. And we sent these folks a series of 3 emails to all the inactives, and essentially what we came up with, we sent them an email that says, hey, do you want to continue receiving email from BirkenstockCentral.com, or do you want to say, no, I no longer wish to receive email? Of the people that clicked through, of those people, and it was a small minority of people, it was only a few hundred people of the 16,000, we only got a few hundred clicks. 51% of the people said, no, take me off the list. These are of the inactives. 51% said no. 37% said yes, keep me on the list. And 12% actually clicked the link to go out to the website. Now, overall, the results were really puzzling, because of the 16,000 people, when we sent them a series of three email reminders that said, hey, last chance, do you want to stay on the list? We only retained 211 subscribers. So we only got 211 subscribers to say, yes, please keep me on the list, which meant that about 15,789 were removed. What was even more puzzling, and this is what kind of keeps us coming back every day, we received 4 orders from that re-engagement campaign.
Mm.
So, that's the puzzling piece was, here's 15,000 people that we just removed, although we received 4 orders from the 16,000. So it was a little puzzling. What overall, I think what each retailer has to understand is, how is your deliverability at each ISP? If your deliverability is okay at each ISP, then you're probably not having deliverability problems. Meaning, if you've got an open rate of 20% overall, and you've got an open rate at Yahoo of 20%, and an open rate at Gmail of 20%, and an open rate at Hotmail of in and around 20%, you probably can keep those inactive subscribers aren't causing you a lot of pain, and you can probably keep them around. However, and this strikes home for me because I'm working with a couple of clients right now that have some issues at Gmail. They have a large list, much larger than 20,000, several 100,000, and they've got deliverability at Gmail. And what we're seeing, and this is a very appropriate time to be talking about this, Gary, because many of the ISPs are looking at new metrics in order to determine inbox placement. And they're now looking at recipient actions. So in the early days, in sort of the 1.0 of email filtering, ISPs looked at content. They looked at words like, Viagra or mortgage or something like that, and if you use the word Viagra in the subject line, automatically to the spam.
Mm-hmm.
Now we're in then we moved into the 2.0 version, where AOL was the first to do this, to introduce the "this is spam" button, and then all the other ISPs followed suit. And then they started to use really two new metrics. One is, they started to introduce the concept of reputation by introducing the "this is spam" button, and they also started to look at bounces. We're now in the 3.0 era, where ISPs are now looking at inbox activity from the recipient side and looking at, are the recipients clicking on your links? Are they adding your address to the address book? Are they enabling images? Are they opening the message? So they're starting to look, and these ISPs specifically, we're talking about places like Gmail, Yahoo, Hotmail, MSN, are starting to look at these engagement metrics, and that's where inactives can really hurt you. But you need to be looking at your metrics by ISP specifically.
And those metrics aren't published, presumably, anywhere. So.
Correct. I will say, if anybody's interested in this, and our friend Chad White at Responses just released a new document, an email engagement and deliverability study. If you Google Chad White and email engagement study, Chad publishes a few of these things that they look at. Deliverability is always sort of kind of been a sort of part art, part science. But the science involved is, if you're having deliverability issues at a particular ISP, you want to take into account email activity. And then from there, one of the things that you want to do to combat that, and one of the tactics that we recommend employing is, if you're having a struggle doing this, send best offers into those inactive subscribers. So perhaps before removing them, you want to send the best content to those subscribers. We talked about that study that we did with Birkenstock Central, where we just purely looked at 16,000 subscribers, sent them an email, sent them 3 emails that says, do you want to stay on the list? What we probably should have done was, we probably should have taken some of the results that we got back from a discount ladder test that we did for Birkenstock Central. And what we did there was we actually segmented the Birkenstock Central list into about 11 different cohorts based on days since last purchase. The concept of the discount ladder test was to see what was the lowest offer, the lowest percentage off offer we could send to each cohort in order for them to respond. And what we found was, when you looked at people that were out 3-year purchasers that hadn't purchased in 3 years, you absolutely had to send those people a 20% off offer. A 10% off offer, if we looked at some of the statistics, we got, when we looked at like a profit from those cohorts, while a 20% off offer might have shown a $1,500 profit, a 10% off only showed $234 of profit. So my recommendation is, if you've got some great offers, 20% off, we see some other retailers trying to engage their inactives with 30% off, send those best offers to those folks that are most disengaged to try to get them to be re-engaged again before making the decision to cut them out of your file.
Now, you've mentioned a couple of things there, Ross, that I want to follow up on, just so our listeners catch the engagement study that you referred to. I'm going to repeat that. That's the author is Chad White, and that's Email Engagement Study, if they want to Google that.
Yeah, if you Google Chad White Email Engagement Study, the document published by he's the research director at Responsive. So that's got some very interesting current statistics of what some of the largest retailers are doing. In fact,
Okay, and the other follow-up I was going to ask is just to explore the concept of the ISPs monitoring metrics such as Gmail, monitoring open click-through rates, image downloads, that sort of thing. Are you finding that in that instance, if a merchant has subscribers with a Gmail address, and to pick a number, half of those subscribers at Gmail are dormant, you're seeing that by leaving those dormant subscribers on the list, it could affect the other half, the deliverability of the other half that are in fact engaged with the list. Is that?
It could. It definitely could. What I don't want to do in sort of a leadership position in the email industry is to say that it always does. My position is, if you are measuring most times if you're measuring your inbox placement at a place like at Gmail, and many times what we ask, like for example, in Listrak as well as many other ESPs, will show opens by ISP, clicks by ISP, and you can very quickly, if you look at one of these reports and you say, oh my goodness, Gmail is clearly an underperformer. I've got an open rate of 20% at Comcast, but an open rate of half a percentage point at Gmail, then you probably knew that you can deduce that you got junked at Gmail, that your campaign hit the junk mailbox at Gmail. You want to be looking at this to find a consistent pattern, and if you see that you've got a consistent pattern at Gmail, amongst other things, one of the things could be that your inactives aren't helping you there. The one thing that you definitely want to be looking at is how many bounces are you sending to Gmail. If you're sending any bounces, get rid of those bounces right away. You also, and this probably goes beyond the scope of of today's podcast, but Gmail has implemented something called a list subscribe header, that if anybody clicks that this is spam button, you can, if you've got that list of unsubscribe header in place, it will trigger an unsubscribe versus just a report of spam. So there's some things that you can do there. Those two are critical. The next thing to look at is, okay, how many engaged subscribers do I have? How many unengaged? And that's at the point where you would start to make some decisions. Do I start to suppress some of my unengaged subscribers?
The implication, also, Ross, that I hear you that I hear you saying there, or implying from what you're saying, is a retailer needs to be proactive on managing dormant subscribers. Don't get to a point where, in the kind of the crazy example I cited at the top of this podcast, about 15,000 out of 20,000 are dormant. Just try not to let yourself get to that position to begin with. Is that
exactly?
Is that
and you also said email. Retailers use email as a way of driving revenue. When our typical Listrak customer is seeing email revenue as about 20 to 30% of their overall pie, of revenue. They're using natural search, paid search, affiliates. Maybe they've got some direct mailers, things like that they're using to drive traffic. If you're listening to this call and email is not driving at least 20% of your traffic, then you're not doing a good job of acquiring new email addresses. A couple of tips for anybody that's out there. We're seeing some great results running sweepstakes. A lot of smaller retailers get scared away from sweepstakes. There's illegal ramifications and things like that, although once you look into it and you do a little bit of homework, you'll realize if you keep your prize less than $50 and you borrow some standard some standard language that's out there in terms of official rules and have your legal team run past it, it's something that you can absolutely add into your repertoire of acquiring new addresses. If it didn't work so well, the big guys like Neiman Marcus and Bloomingdale's and Macy's and Nordstrom would not run them every day. Those guys run sweeps every day and acquire thousands and thousands of new subscribers every day, and if you're a small merchant, you should be doing the same thing. The other thing that we're seeing that's working really well is the implementation of a DHTML pop-up after a certain amount of time on site. So we're recommending that a number of our clients do this. If you want some examples, shoot out to BirkenstockCentral.com or shoot out to Swell, SWELL.com, and check out what we're doing there. Essentially, what we're doing is we're waiting a few seconds, maybe it's about a minute of inactivity. We're popping the DHTML pop-up, asking somebody to sign up. We're then dropping a cookie so that the thing doesn't constantly pop up and annoy people. I can speak to Birkenstock Central, where we tripled the amount of new subscribers per day that we're bringing on board as a result of putting that pop-up in place. And it's the revenue is following that rate. Generally, you're going to be looking at about 20% list atrophy each year, 20% of people unsubscribing. I wish I had a better stat for how many people go dormant each year. It's really going to probably depend upon the brand, but you're going to be able to use your own email service provider, and if you can, I would recommend that you talk to the guys at Listrak about this, but your ESP should be able to tell you how many people are going dormant, each quarter, each year. But you want to be implementing, sweeps, pop-ups, in-store email capture, mobile capture, text, holiday to a short code to get mobile sign-ups, even implementing QR codes, things like that, to be really acquiring email addresses at every touch point. I was at Pier 1 with my mother doing some Christmas shopping the other night, and the lady at checkout said, "Could I please have your phone number and your email address?" That's how she started the conversation. Mm-hmm. Conversation at checkout started there. Phone number and email address, please. That's what my recommendation for any merchants listening today.
And you touched there, Ross, on a normal unsubscribe, if there's such a thing as a normal unsubscribe, and a normal dormancy you weren't sure about, but for purposes of merchants listening to this, I think it is fair to say it goes back to your initial point, which is you need to be adding subscribers because you're going to be losing subscribers along the way. Yep,
exactly. And the idea is, we're playing off of this really human influence element of the concept of recency. And that is that people that are more recent to your brand are going to be more apt to transact with that brand than those that are less recent. So you need to make sure that you're adding new people to your list all the time. Those new people, by the way, are going to be clicking through, and they're going to be opening your emails, and they're going to be like enabling images at Gmail. And that's all going to point to positive reputation out at Gmail. And by having a positive sort of offensive strategy, Gmail's going to see, hey, this retailer actually has a lot of engaged people. Sure, they've got some unengaged people, but they've got a lot of engaged people as well. That's going to count positively towards your reputation and ensure that you've got inbox placement there. So, really, a good offense is a good defense as well in this case.
Ross, we have just another minute or two here. Anything else to wrap things up? Anything else for our listeners, smaller e-commerce merchants?
Yeah, I think, again, if I could just reiterate one thing, it's just understand and segment your list by inactivity. Understand, then beyond that, understand which discounts you have to give to those levels of inactivity in order for them to become re-engaged again, and continue to run those types of campaigns every day. We've seen in some studies unengaged subscribers will receive different subject lines than engaged subscribers. So those folks that might be unengaged will get subject lines with the words like "we want you back" or "we miss you," things like that. So that would be my one piece of encouragement. And then for anybody else that's tuning in and is still listening, time to start thinking about post-holiday campaigns. For all the retailers that are in holiday mode, you are about to receive a windfall of new subscribers, and it's going to be important to understand how to market to those folks. We see large unsubscribe numbers coming back after holiday because of the large amount of Christmas purchases or holiday purchases that are happening. Understand how you want to be messaging to those people post-holiday, and start to think about your post-holiday campaigns.
Okay. Well, for purposes of our listeners, we've been visiting with Ross Kramer. Ross is the co-founder and CEO of Listrak. Listrak being the pioneering email service provider. That's listrak.com, and I'll spell that. That's Listrak. There's no C there. Listrak.com. And Ross Kramer, the CEO and co-founder of Listrak. We want to thank you for your time today, sir.
Gary, it's always an honor and a privilege to be part of the group.
That's all the time we have for this week's e-commerce conversation. I hope you enjoyed it. Please tune in next week for another new episode.